And you're welcome to the program. This afternoon, journalism is reportedly under attack with global organization Reporters Without Borders indicating that there is serious attack on the fourth estate. Journalists' safety has seriously deteriorated in recent years, the report says, while adding that although Ghana is considered to be a regional model of democratic stability, journalists have experienced growing pressure in recent times. Now, to protect their jobs and their security, most media persons, just like myself, have increasingly resorted to self-censorship as the government, according to this report, is showing itself to be intolerant. Here's a package and a wrap of the activities marking the World Press Freedom Day today for you, starting with details of the report.
Yeah, Ghana was 60th globally. This time around, we've dropped 2 places, like you said. We are now 62nd. They have the political context. They say that although Ghana is considered a regional model of democratic stability, journalists have experienced growing pressures in recent years. To protect their jobs and their security, they are increasingly resorting to self-censorship as government has shown itself to be intolerant of criticism. In addition, a third of the country's media outlets are owned by politicians or by people with ties to the leading political parties, and the content they produce is largely partisan. That is the main argument that Reporters Without Borders make in terms of the political context. If you look at the legal framework, it says that although freedom of the press is guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution, media outlets are free to operate as they like. There are significant concerns about a clause in the law that allows a fee to be charged if the information requested is in a language other than English. That is talking about the right to information law and how journalists are struggling sometimes to get the needed information. But this is also very, very important. Look at the economic context. It says that in Ghana, most media outlets face financial problems, reflecting in low salaries and poor working conditions for journalists. Newspapers are often launched only to fold within a certain time frame. On the other hand, government agencies and advertising contracts are paid for publishing news items. Non-transparent and inequitable processes are used to allocate state advertising. And then it goes to safety of journalists, where it talks about the 3 journalists who were arrested last year and the specific concerns that the Reporters Without Borders have about these arrests. So if you look at a political indicator, for instance, Ghana globally is 63rd. We fare 61.88. That is the points we get there. If you look at the economic indicator, Ghana is globally on the 80th position. It is one of the reasons why Ghana continues to drop because of the economic indicator. The argument that a lot of journalists are not being properly remunerated, and so journalists are having to do a lot of things that undermines press freedom. And so on that score, Ghana is not doing so well. We score 47.94%, and we are 80th globally. In terms of legislations, the laws that exist to protect journalists, Ghana is doing fairly well. We are 31 in the world, scoring 79.62%. In terms of a security indicator, Ghana is also performing very poorly there. We placed 103 out of 180 countries in the world, and we score only 61.25%, making the concerns that journalists sometimes are being threatened in the line of their work. If you look at a political indicator, the idea that journalists are subservient to political parties and that political parties and politically connected persons are the ones who own media houses. Ghana scores 54 and has 66.61%. Look at an economic indicator as well. From 2022, we have 69%, and then you come to this year where we have 47.2%. The security indicator, we seem to have dropped a few pointers from last year's 101 place out of 180 to this year's 103. So, and it's not looking so good. You look at last year and you look at this year, in terms of almost all the indicators, Ghana has deteriorated.
DJ, along with Media Foundation of West Africa, GIBA and Primpac, recently urged the government to amend certain provisions of the Electronic Communications Act and the Criminal Code, specifically Section 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act 1960 Act 29. As critical stakeholders in the media industry, we cannot remain unconcerned as these laws are used to arrest citizens and journalists and prefer criminal charges over civil remedies for press and speech offenses that are merely defamatory. The arbitrary application of these laws only serves to instill fear in the general populace. One of our colleagues, Noah Nati Dame of Radio Ada, was recently detained for 7 days on false publication charges due to these bad laws. And this has affected our 2023 World Press Freedom Index, our ranking on 2023 World Press Freedom Index. Ghana has moved from 60 to 62. 2 backwards. As the umbrella body of journalists in this country, Madam Chairperson, we will continue to ensure that any action or law that seeks to stifle free expression fails. Madam Chairperson, on this day, we cannot forget Ahmed Swali. Over 4 years after his gruesome murder, we continue to seek justice for him by putting pressure on the authorities concerned to up their game. Quite recently, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice disclosed that the docket on Ahmed Swali had not reached his office, considering the fact that his office has prosecutorial powers. The President also assured us at our dinner night last year, that's last December, that he's going to see to the closure of this case and ensure that perpetrators are brought to face the full rigor of the law. As an association, we will continue putting pressure on the police to conclude the investigation on the matter and submit the docket to the AG for necessary action.
Well, so that's the position of the Ghana Journalists Association. I want to bring in now Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleimanah Brahma, who's spending some time with us here on the Pulse. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. We'll get into the details, but your initial comments on, of course, the drop, 2 steps back, that's where we find ourselves now as a country. It's not encouraging, is it? Kindly unmute for us so we can get the point you're making, sir.
Well, I think it's quite unfortunate for Ghana to be where we are now. We used to be, even 2018, #1 in Africa, around 29, 30th position in the world. And now we dropped last year to the 60th and this year to the 62nd. I don't think that it is a development that anyone who is concerned about the progress of our democracy and the progress of our human rights records should be happy about. But it is not surprising, because I don't think that from the significant drop last year, any measures have been taken by government to address concerns and the issues that made us get to where we got to last year. And so it's unfortunate, but for me, it's not surprising.
A number of dimensions to it, but the political context, of course, comes forth, since it's got to do directly with our line of duty. And of course, government being cited as positioning itself or showing itself as an institution that's not willing to allow criticism. How dangerous is that for our democracy as a country?
Well, that's very dangerous, because I think that if you want to measure the strength of a democracy, you look at the strength of the media sector, how free our critical journalists can be, and how civil liberties and press freedoms are protected. But over the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years now, under this administration, we've seen, as the GJA president was talking about, incident upon incident, arrest, detention, storming of media houses, ostensibly over claims that people have made, which are deemed to be false. In some instances, these are just basically statements that are made that at best defames someone. For example, if you take the incident involving Bobi Ansa, it was a claim over an alleged acquisition of some state land by the First Lady. And if it was deemed or realized that it wasn't true, what prevented the First Lady from filing a defamation suit against the journalist? But they got police officers to storm the radio station to pick the journalist in the Rambo style. We've had the incident of David Tamaklo of WhatsApp News, who was actually arrested on charges of publication of false news. And he was arrested at the time when that particular news that they were claiming hadn't actually been published. the GJ president talked about the recent incident of Noah Dame. And I asked people, how did a post, about Magdan turn out to be a case of Republic versus Noah Dame? So I think that, as we said collectively the other week, the government is significantly abusing this particular provision. And it is quite curious because this is a piece of legislation that President Akufo-Addo, then candidate Akufo-Addo in 2011, castigated and said that it was even unconstitutional for that law to exist. But surprisingly, under his regime as president, that is when we are seeing the law being used and in some instances being abused.
Expert says the activity of state agencies, for instance, the Ghana Police Service, is that known institution that cracks down on the media directly if they are to enforce these regulations on the publication of false news and all of that. They are the ones doing the arrests. So why is government taking ultimate responsibility for what's happening?
Well, I think, Blessed, as you know, when we say government, it doesn't mean President Akufo-Addo, or it doesn't just mean his cabinet. It's the state, and the government is responsible for managing the affairs of the state. And to the extent that these actions are being perpetrated by state actors, certainly that is the government. If the police or the military or the immigration service or any other state entity for that matter acts in a way that undermines any obligations and commitments of Ghana to international, regional, and national conventions or legislation, pieces of legislation on human rights and other actions, it is the state, and the state is represented by the government.
I see. Now, going forward, are there some recommendations, for instance, from your perspective as the Media Foundation for West Africa, as to how we could start to reverse the trend? Are we beyond repair?
No, we are not. We are certainly not beyond repair. But the first is that the government must accept that things are not going well with press freedom in our country. So far, we have had a government that is living in denial. You talk about what is happening, and they will have all manner of defenses to put out. Before the 2022 press freedom ranking came out, Madam Elizabeth Ohene, who is a media advisor to the government, wrote an article chastising the Media Foundation for a publication that I had put out and an interview that I had done with the BBC, saying that we are biased. 2 days or so, the report was released, and that significant drop happened. So, first of all, the government must accept that things are not going well. They must move away from rhetoric to action. We have been talking about the National Comprehensive Framework on Safety of Journalists for how many years now? We don't have it. The government says, look, we are committed to the fight against press freedom, fighting against abuses against journalists, but we are seeing none of that. The president continues to say, look, we will find the killers of Ahmed Swale. 2 years on, nothing is happening. The Attorney General at last year's World Human Rights Day said, we are working on the Swale incident and we'll make sure that the perpetrators are brought to book. It's just talk and talk and talk and no action. This is not the first time we are having a government under the Fourth Republic. And why is the situation the way it is? It is because we have a government that has become quite intolerant and believes that everybody must sing the praise of the government. And without singing the praises of the government, then you are not doing something that is right. I think that it starts with government, and we all have a responsibility to play.
Okay, your organization was there when the information minister launched what he termed as the coordinated mechanisms for the safety of journalists. He's been speaking today as well about this whole ranking, and of course, as we celebrate the International Press Freedom Day, I want you to just spare a few minutes with us, listen to the information minister, and I'll take your thoughts on his posture on this.
Today's press briefing focuses, I think, primarily on the report that is about to be presented by GEPA. But ahead of that, I'm sure you know that today is World Press Freedom Day. So the government has a quick statement to put out, which I will share with you, and then I'll make a few introductory remarks about the importance of the report that is about to be published today. the government of Ghana renews its commendation of the media in commemoration of World Press Freedom Day. The occasion's 30th anniversary is on the international theme, Shaping a Future of Rights, Freedom of Expression as a Driver for All Other Human Rights. The media has been instrumental over the years in highlighting various rights that require attention for full enjoyment. The work of the media also in highlighting instances of abuse of some rights by sections of society has led to redress in many of these instances. We urge the media to remain resolute on this path. The quest to have all citizens fully access their economic rights is yet to be fully achieved, especially as the world faces dim economic forecasts following recent global challenges. Now, while urging the media in Ghana to keep the spotlight on all human rights, we want to in particular encourage an even sharper focus on efforts to ensure that the economic rights of citizens are fully actualized. Programs by state and non-state actors to support the Ghanaian people in building back faster after the recent economic challenges should be given deeper attention.
Well, Information Minister speaking there, then he goes ahead to ask the media to support the coordinated mechanism for the safety of journalists. Your take on government's position on it?
Well, I think largely the minister was basically sending a message of well wishes to the media fraternity and also urging the media to do quite a bit of work on, helping citizens to assert their economic rights and perhaps less of things around press freedom and freedom of expression in our country. But just to comment on the basis of your statement that the minister urged journalists to support the mechanism on safety of journalists, I don't know which mechanism that the minister is talking about, because we don't have that comprehensive framework on safety of journalists. We don't have it. Why is it? Basically an office space was allocated, as a space for, supporting journalists to do whatever it is that they have to do. You talk to the NMC, they tell you, look, it was just basically an office that was commissioned, no desks, no tables, and so on and so forth, no personnel to work on that. Look, 2 years ago, we started a project in Liberia and Sierra Leone on helping these countries to develop their national comprehensive framework on safety of journalists. And when we were proposing the project, we did indicate that we wanted to model it on Ghana's example, because we were quite sure that given the way the minister has been talking about it, we're going to have that framework in place before even the project commenced. As I speak, we finished the Liberia National Comprehensive Framework for Safety of Journalists. We've done the same in Liberia, has been launched by state actors, and it's working. And in Ghana, we are still talking. So I think that's why I make the point that we need to move from the rhetoric, the fine talks, to having things done. Otherwise, we would continue to drop. Because again, as I said, we have a government certainly that is not, friendly when it comes to receiving criticism on the part of the media. And it's something that we have to work on. Otherwise, I think we will continue to lose that golden opportunity and golden ranking that we used to have some previous years ago.
Okay, we're wrapping up on this conversation, but we can't go without speaking about the economic context to this. The reports pointing out that most newspapers, most media outlets are facing equally a financial crunch. And in the case of print media, many of them are beginning to fold out. You're concerned about this?
Well, that's really a global phenomenon. Issues of media sustainability or media viability is a global phenomenon. I don't think that the economy here is so weak than the economy in Liberia or Sierra Leone or the Gambia or some of the smaller other countries. So that's a global phenomenon, and it's a major concern for all media development actors. Right now in global conversations, that's where the focus is. How do we ensure that the media are able to operate are able to survive the storm. But we need to also be mindful of the fact that times have changed. We cannot continue to use old practices, old methods, old strategies to achieve, results at a time when things have changed. So we all have to revive our strategies as media operators. And why don't we have mergers and acquisitions? Why can't 10 newspapers come together and say, look, instead of competing against ourselves, let us have a joint publication and do more. I think we need to think anew. Otherwise, the death of some of the media houses would be quite close.
Grateful for the opportunity. It's a day of introspection as well. Anything to reflect on?
Well, I would say that best wishes to my colleague journalists across the country and across West Africa. We just have to do our work in terms of promoting accountability, transparency, playing our watchdog role. Times are hard, it's difficult. Some people are working without salaries, but of course, the global economy has taken a hit and we all need to sacrifice to rebuild it back. So let's do all that we can and look for better times ahead.
Yeah, we'll look forward to those exciting times. Suleimanah Brahma, thank you for spending some time with us here on The Pulse.